So today I'm here with Dr. Steve Hart. He is the director of the Soy Aquaculture Alliance. Steve and I have worked together now for about 7 years. He originally started at the Indiana Soybean Alliance, the aquaculture initiative there. But today I want Steve to tell us a little bit about the Soy Aquaculture Alliance, how it was founded, and the collaboration efforts that he's put together among other soybean associations.
Well, thank you, Norman. I'm glad to be here and glad to explain to you about SAA, Soy Aquaculture Alliance, and how we got this started. For every soybean producing state, there is an organization in that state that is in charge of using what's called the soybean checkoff dollars for research and market development. And those dollars are all governed by the USDA. So each one of these states has their own individual soybean board that is in charge of figuring out what type of projects they want to invest their dollars in. And these are called the Qualified State Soybean Boards. And Indiana Soybean Alliance, who I was working for at the time as the director of aquaculture, had their own specific aquaculture initiative looking at developing aquaculture here in the state of Indiana. And all the other states that were also interested in aquaculture at the time did not have staff in place to handle aquaculture issues, so they started calling me a lot and asking me about aquaculture and wanting me to review projects and just give them advice and some consulting. So the other states, they started calling me and asking me for advice on aquaculture projects and having me review proposals and just general consulting on best use of soybean checkoff dollars in aquaculture investments. So we really started to see a need. Because what we found was a lot of us were investing in aquaculture but weren't really talking to each other about that. And we were doing some duplicative projects. So back in 2011, we really looked at what can we do to move this forward and really not only coordinate our efforts, but also focus our checkoff dollar investments. Instead of having a bunch of different organizations throw money at a project, let's look at this strategically and figure out which projects are the best projects that we all can agree on and move forward with. So that's why we started the Soy Aquaculture Alliance, and now we've got several state checkoff boards who are part of it, but we wanted to look at more than just the soybean checkoff organizations. We wanted to include other aspects of the industry as well. So we opened it up as a membership organization that was open to the broader aquaculture industry. And Bell Aquaculture was one of the first organizations outside the soybean association world to join, and they signed up right at the beginning, have been a founding member and very supportive of all our efforts from the start.
So Steve, I know some of the research that you're investing in and the dollars and to help grow aquaculture in North America. Could you explain a couple of those projects that you're working on or collaborating with to help us grow aquaculture in North America?
Well, yeah, there's several of these that we're working on. One that I'll go over is specific, really relevant to the work that Bell is doing in starting a feed mill. A lot of the fish that we've worked with developing soy-based feeds for, we know a lot of their nutritional requirements, but what we found is that there are some nutrients that are missing in soy that are present in fish meal. So we've done a bunch of research trying to identify what those nutrients are and how we can then supplement them into feed so we can move to more soy-based feeds with less reliance on fish meal. One of these nutrients that we found to be deficient is called taurine, which is essentially it's just an amino acid, but it's absent in soybean meal. And when we start feeding a lot of soy products to some fish, they don't do as well. So we found that we need to add taurine back into the feed. The problem is taurine is not an approved ingredient in the United States. And it's not for any health or safety issues, it's just that no one's ever applied to have it approved for fish. So we went to the FDA and asked them what would it take to get taurine approved for fish, and they gave us this whole criteria of, we got to show it's required, we've got to show what happens when we put it in feed, does it will it accumulate in the fillet, just all these other issues. Will it survive the processing when you actually manufacture the feed? So we got this checklist of things that need to be done from FDA. And so one of our first research programs was looking at that checklist and making sure we went and did everything. And we're just wrapping up the final items on that checklist right now. And hopefully by the first thing this fall, we'll be able to go back to the FDA with this list and say, we've done all of the things you've requested. Now let's get taurine approved for fish feeds. And then hopefully that will help Bell, and then they can start putting taurine in their soy-based feeds. So that's one area. Another area that we've really focused a lot of attention on is broodstock development. And when you look at the global industry, the latest numbers I just saw last week show that only 20% of the industry is using any type of selective breeding program. And that's just not going to cut it. When you look at traditional livestock production, the terrestrial animals, they've been doing breeding programs in some cases for thousands of years. And with fish, we're just getting started. So we're looking at research programs where we can start doing traditional selective breeding programs, but we have technology now where we can take samples from these fish and determine which genes are controlling the ability to accept soy in the feed. And we can start actual traditional breeding programs where we select for soy tolerance in these fish. And we're doing several projects right now looking at that.
Great. Well, Steve, I also want to hear your vision on a couple items. One is, how do we alleviate, or at least in part alleviate, some of the trade deficit that we have in seafood here in North America, and also the upcoming protein deficit with 9 billion people to feed by 2050?
Well, that's some really good questions, and I'll address the protein deficit first. When you look at livestock production, as a representative of the soybean industry, we obviously support all types of livestock production because our products go into all different types of animal feeds. But the reality of the situation is that aquaculture is probably the most exciting of all of these because of the conversion efficiencies. If you look at beef and swine, you're looking at feed conversion ratios of 3 to 1 or higher, depending on which ones you're looking at. Even poultry, which is the closest competitor to fish, you're looking at conversions of 2 to 1. When you start looking at fish, because they're cold-blooded animals and because they live in water and don't have to put as much energy into bone structure, you now are looking at feed conversion ratios in some cases of 1 to 1, especially with like rainbow trout. So really, when you look at where is the best investment for the future, as we do get 9 billion people on the planet, it's in growing aquaculture, just because of the efficiency in converting feed, and especially as we look at creating more plant-based ingredients and moving away from the fish meal-based diets. Fish meal will always be a part of these feeds, and the fish meal industry has done a great job of providing some sustainable ingredients, but it's just never going to grow because they're harvested from the ocean, and the sustainable fisheries, they're at their max yield, so they're not going to supply more fish meal. So we've got to look for those alternative sources. We've got excellent converters of feed, and we've got lots of plant-based ingredients we can start putting into those diets. So it's pretty exciting. In terms of where the U.S. can go, we're behind the 8 ball there. We've developed a lot of the technology that has helped grow the global aquaculture industry, but for the last 5, 6, 7 years, our industry has been stagnant. And my hope is that with new farms coming online like Bell, and there's some others out there, that we'll start to see a kind of a transition in how the U.S. approaches aquaculture, and looking at maybe some more intensive production. And the other thing that's pretty exciting right now is working with the administration and looking at, can we start producing fish with all of our natural resources? So we've been involved with not only people like Bell, but also trying to get production in our federal waters. And these efforts are moving forward pretty nicely right now.
Well, Steve, I appreciate your continued support of Bell and just our partnership, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much.